It shimmered like fire, walls made entirely of amber and gold, glowing with a light unlike anything else on earth. Once called the eighth wonder of the world, the Amber Room was a gift of beauty, diplomacy, and power. But in the chaos of war, it vanished, stolen, hidden, or destroyed. For decades, treasure hunters, historians, and governments have searched for it. Yet its true fate remains one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. To uncover the truth, we return to where it all began, Prussia, at the dawn of a masterpiece that would change history.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Our mission here, as always, is to take a stack of sources, a complex historical mystery, documents, research, and distill it down into the core, essential knowledge you need to be instantly well-informed. Today, we are plumbing the depths of arguably the greatest, most enduring art mystery of the last century, the legendary Amber Room, or as it was known in its day, the eighth wonder of the world. While you, the listener, can today gaze upon a truly spectacular reconstruction in the Catherine Palace near St. Petersburg, Russia, the original masterpiece vanished without a trace at the end of World War II.
And that vanishing act last officially documented in Königsberg, East Prussia. That's really why this story persists. It's a priceless artifact wrapped up in political betrayal, catastrophic wartime logistics, and, well, decades of obsessive, sometimes lethal searching.
Nice.
It's the ultimate lost treasure narrative that continues to captivate legions of historians, detectives, and hobbyists alike. You know?
Absolutely. Our deep dive today is going to be comprehensive. We need to unpack the room's unique and opulent origin, trace its fateful and devastating journey as German war booty in 1941, and then thoroughly analyze the subsequent decades of investigation, both state-sponsored, like that Stasi operation, and independent, often tragic searches that followed the war. This is a story about material, mystery, and obsession. Let's unpack this, starting at the genesis of this golden masterpiece.
Right. So the primary reason the Amber Room holds such a unique place in history, beyond its sheer size, is its material. It's not gold in the metallic sense, nor is it marble or anything like that. It is amber, an incredible substance that our sources repeatedly refer to as the gold of the Baltic Sea.
It's easy to dismiss that phrase as merely poetic, but what exactly sets this specific material apart? Both geologically and culturally, I mean.
Well, geologically, we are talking about millions of years of history. Amber is fossilized resin, specifically originating from these vast pine forests that existed millions of years ago. These forests then became submerged, and eventually the resin washed up along the Baltic coast. And the major area for finding this treasure was precisely near Königsberg.
Ah, okay.
So the local coastal inhabitants, they recognized its aesthetic and monetary value very early on, using it for trade and ornamentation long before any royalty got involved.
So the material itself is fundamentally tied to the place it later disappeared from. That's interesting.
Exactly. It had a deep cultural resonance there. And it was in Königsberg, then the capital of the Kingdom of Prussia, that the idea of creating something monumental from this native material actually originated.
Okay, and that vision originated with the Hohenzollern regent, Friedrich III, who later became King Friedrich I around 1701. But it wasn't just a nice room. Our sources emphasize that this was an extraordinary kind of pioneering effort.
Oh, it truly was. An architectural and artistic gamble, really. No one had ever before conceived of or attempted to clad an entire room, walls, cornices, everything, with nothing but pressed and carved amber. Just imagine the sheer scale of that project. Decorating square meters of wall space with thousands upon thousands of tiny, individually shaped, polished, and mounted amber stones. It required specialized artistry and a truly staggering material budget.
Right. Work began at Charlottenburg Palace, but King Friedrich there died before the work could be completed. The room was then inherited by his son, Friedrich Wilhelm I, in 1713. And this is where the story pivots dramatically, because the new king was, well, frankly, maybe too frugal and pragmatic for such extravagance.
That's a good way to put it. He was famously known as the Soldier King. Our sources describe him as a sober, military-focused ruler. He saw the Amber Room not as a crowning artistic achievement, but as an expensive, largely unfinished liability. He just had no use for such opulent luxury in his otherwise pretty austere court.
So did he just sell it off? Or was this move purely transactional rather than a genuine gift? What was the thinking there?
It was definitely transactional diplomacy at its finest. In 1716, he decided to gift the room to Tsar Peter the Great. Now, this wasn't merely a gesture of goodwill. It was an incredibly expensive, highly visible way to secure the vital political and military support of the rising Russian major power.
Ah, okay, so a strategic gift.
Precisely. It deepened the friendship between the two nations through this exchange, signaling Prussia's commitment via an object of immense, quantifiable value.
So the Amber Room embarked on its first grand, relatively peaceful journey in the winter of 1716, traveling all the way to St. Petersburg. What's surprising, though, is that, despite the political importance of the gift, Tsar Peter the Great seemingly lost interest pretty quickly.
He did, yeah. The room initially languished, remained mostly unnoticed for several decades. It wasn't until 1755 that it found its magnificent and final historical home, the Tsarskoye Selo royal residence, specifically the sprawling Catherine Palace, just outside St. Petersburg.
And this is where the room expanded into the true legend we know today, really solidifying its Russian identity, right?
Absolutely. Under Catherine the Great, the Rhine was dramatically transformed. The original Prussian panels were no longer sufficient for the vast space in the Catherine Palace, so the room was expanded sixfold.
Sixfold? Wow.
Yeah, think about the scale of this project. It required thousands more pieces of Baltic amber, and she significantly enhanced the design, adding valuable Florentine mosaics to balance the golden shimmer of the resin. For centuries, the room stood as a glittering symbol of mutual connection, proudly regarded as the ultimate Russian-German masterpiece. It was in this state, complete, expanded, and protected, that it remained until, well, the darkness of 1941 arrived.
Right. The geopolitical currents shift violently in 1941 when the Wehrmacht launched Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. By September, German forces had reached Leningrad, modern-day St. Petersburg, and the fate of the Amber Room was sealed.
This is where timing becomes absolutely everything. While Soviet museum staff scrambled heroically to secure and evacuate countless masterpieces, paintings, sculptures, documents, the sheer size and inherent fragility of the Amber Room panels made a quick evacuation basically impossible.
It was too delicate, too big.
Both. It was deemed just too time-consuming and risky to dismantle under pressure. So when the German forces entered the Catherine Palace, the room was still there. It fell directly into German hands, becoming one of the most significant cultural prizes of the entire war.
And the sources confirm the Germans acted swiftly. They didn't destroy it, they recognized its value. The valuable amber paneling was quickly but carefully packed up. How many crates did the entire room fill?
27 crates. That number 27 is crucial because it gives us a sense of the scale of the object and, the logistical challenge of moving it. These weren't small boxes. They were large crates designed to protect highly delicate carved amber panels.
Okay, 27 crates. And then the Amber Room went on its second and far more sinister journey. This time it traveled as stolen property Raubgut, as the German documents term it, loaded onto Wehrmacht trucks, covering over 1,000 kilometers, heading west back into the German Reich territory, specifically to the provincial capital of Königsberg.
And the relocation to Königsberg wasn't just practical. It was profoundly ideological. It was immediately put on display in Königsberg Castle, a symbolic move. For the local Nazi administration, particularly Gauleiter Erich Koch, who basically specialized in systematizing art theft in the East, they framed this as something far greater than plunder.
Wait, so they framed the largest art theft of the war as mere repatriation. What propaganda did they use to justify that? How did that work?
Precisely. The prevailing local view, heavily promoted by Koch and his apparatus, was that the room was not stolen. It was simply returning to its rightful place of origin. The argument was, the amber came from the Baltic coast, the room was commissioned by a Prussian king, and therefore it was viewed as Volkish heritage that had been temporarily misplaced in Russia. This mindset gave them ownership and justification for the theft.
The psychological impact of seeing it returned must have been enormous then. Our sources mention the immense fascination it exerted on those who got to view it in the castle.
It did. One observer recalled the experience of entering the displayed room and feeling as if they were standing in a golden sun, describing it as a dream. For the Germans viewing it, it held immense cultural and emotional weight, reinforcing this idea that they had reclaimed a lost national treasure.
The man placed in direct custodianship of this treasure was museum director Alfred Rode. He was an established, highly respected amber expert.
Right. And for him, the room's arrival was described as the fulfillment of a life's dream. He treated it in many ways as his personal treasure. But that personal joy was pretty short-lived. By early 1944, the tide of war had turned decisively, and the threat of Allied bombing raids was becoming critical. Rode, fearing destruction, had to act.
So in the spring of 1944, Rode ordered the Amber Room dismantled once more. And what was the chosen refuge? Where did it go?
The decision was made to move the 27 heavy crates into the deep vaulted cellars of Königsberg Castle. This wasn't a casual decision. It was seen as the most secure, protected location in a city bracing for attack. And this is the exact moment, really, where the official historical record of the original Amber Room ends. From the spring of 1944 onward, after the crates were moved into that labyrinthine underground, nobody ever saw the original masterpiece again.
Wow, okay.
The decision to move the room into the cellars was timely, but it merely postponed the catastrophe. In August 1944, the British launched devastating air raids that largely destroyed Königsberg.
So the city was gutted. The question then becomes, did the castle cellars hold? Did it survive the bombing?
Initially, yes. Director Rode was still communicating its status. In September 1944, a month after the heavy bombing, he wrote a report stating that the Amber Room was still intact, save for some minor damage to 6 base plates. But he realized the city itself was no longer safe, and he desperately began seeking safer alternative storage locations, Ausweichquartier outside Königsberg.
We're talking about finding hiding places for 27 large crates in the middle of a collapsing regime. What was the difficulty there? Must have been immense.
A difficulty was extreme wartime logistics. Rode traveled extensively, even as far as Saxony, looking at suitable remote castles and mines. But he found that every single existing art depot across the Reich was already full of other evacuated treasures. He failed utterly to secure a place outside Königsberg to move the crates.
And crucially, there's testimony from Rode's son, Wolfgang Rode, that gives us a window into the father's psychological state during this intense period. What did he say?
Well, Wolfgang Rode indicated that his father wasn't actually in a frantic hurry to move the crates, despite the failed external search.
Really? Why not?
Because Alfred Rode genuinely believed the castle's protected cellars, built centuries earlier by the Teutonic Knights, were the safest place possible. The structure was ancient, massive, and deep underground. He trusted the architecture, I suppose.
But safety was about to be obliterated. The major Soviet offensive began on the night of January 12, 1945, and the German defense was collapsing rapidly. Yet, Gauleiter Erich Koch ordered the city to hold out at all costs, turning Königsberg into a fortress under siege.
It was pure chaos. Amidst this, we have the last documented contact Rode made regarding the Amber Room. On January 13, 1945, Wolfgang Rode spoke to his father, who assured him, and this is the key quote, that the art objects, including the Amber Room, had been successfully secured in the castle's cellar vaults.
And this assurance is the starting point for decades of frustrated searching, because the father never specified which cellar room held the secret. Is that right?
That's the absolute crux of the mystery. Königsberg Castle wasn't just a building. It was a vast, sprawling complex built over centuries, with numerous unmapped tunnels, chambers, and vaults stretching deep beneath the foundation. A true medieval labyrinth. Rode made it clear the room was in the castle, but his failure, or maybe his refusal, to specify the exact vault means subsequent investigators were searching blindly in an underground warren.
This vagueness leads directly to the core historical question. Was the Amber Room successfully moved out of the city? There was that 6-week period when the Wehrmacht managed to briefly secure a narrow corridor to the Baltic Sea.
That corridor was the only sliver of hope. It allowed hundreds of thousands of refugees, wounded soldiers, and indeed high-value assets to flee west via ships. If the military decided the Amber Room was politically too important to fall into Soviet hands, they had a narrow window to transport those 27 crates out.
This uncertainty fueled the great conflicting theories of the room's ultimate fate. We have the truly haunting theory that the room sank with the massive refugee ship Gustloff.
The Gustloff. It was packed far beyond capacity, with refugees fleeing the advancing Red Army when it was torpedoed in late January 1945. Given the chaos, it's entirely possible the priceless crates were loaded aboard with military equipment and other sensitive items. If they were on the Gustloff, well, the room now rests at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, ironically having been swallowed by the very waters that produced its material.
A grim irony. Then there's the theory that it was transported and hidden elsewhere within the heart of the collapsing Reich. This is supported by crucial precedent, isn't it?
That precedent is vital, yes. We know other extremely high-value stolen art and assets like the Reichsbank gold and valuable Old Master oil paintings were successfully transported far west and hidden. A famous example is the discovery made by advancing American forces in the walled-up shafts of a potash mine in Thuringia. They found incredible treasures there.
So why was that mine discovery so important to the Amber Room search? What did it prove?
Well, it established a clear methodology. The Nazis used deep, secure, disused mines as centralized hidden depots for their most valuable raw gut. When the Americans secured the Thuringia mine, they found this trove of recovered art. Investigators immediately checked the inventory. If the Germans had the logistical capacity to move paintings and gold to Thuringia, surely they would have moved the amber room too. It makes sense, right?
Yeah, logically.
But here is the massive puzzle piece. The amber room was conspicuously absent among those recovered treasures. It just wasn't there.
So if it didn't sink and wasn't found in the established mines, we return to the darkest, maybe simplest theory.
That it was destroyed. That it simply burned in the cellars of the destroyed Königsberg castle during the final battles and subsequent firestorm that ravaged the ruins. The structure burned, the complex heating systems failed, and the fragile amber, which is, after all, flammable resin, was incinerated, turning the 27 crates into ash. The lack of physical evidence either way is precisely what fuels the decades of searching and keeps the myth alive.
Right. The sheer lack of definitive proof has elevated the disappearance of the amber room from a historical footnote to a decades-long obsession, driving countless individuals and even nations to search relentlessly, sometimes with tragic outcomes.
The search quickly centralized around Germany itself, particularly focusing on locations that fit the established pattern of Nazi storage. A primary focus became Schacht-Wiedekind, a disused potash mine near Göttingen. This mine was already known to have served as a wartime depot for valuable items from various museums and libraries.
And the man who dedicated his life to this theory was Georg Stein, the hobby historian who became the single most tenacious amber room hunter.
Stein was absolutely dedicated, devoting 3 decades of his life to this one goal. He was a meticulous amateur historian, convinced he could solve the puzzle through archival evidence and local testimonies. His confidence that the room was in the Wiedekind mine was immensely strengthened by a crucial, tangible discovery within the shaft itself.
What was the discovery? What did he find that solidified his conviction?
They found various minor amber artifacts that had originated from Königsberg University. Simple things, not the room itself. But if these smaller, less politically vital amber pieces had managed to leave the city and be stored securely hundreds of miles west in Wiedekind, Stein reasoned, then the grandest piece of amber art, the amber room itself, must have also been successfully transported and hidden there. It made sense to him.
This became more than a hobby for Stein, though. It became a financial black hole, didn't it?
Oh, precisely. The nature of the search required massive resources. The Wiedekind site was inaccessible, buried, and required heavy machinery and specialized excavation teams. Stein exhausted his personal funds, ran into severe financial difficulties, accumulating enormous debt trying to finance these large-scale operations. The search consumed his life, his finances, and eventually, well, his sanity.
And this singular obsession ended in devastating tragedy on January 20th, 1987. Near Titting, Bavaria, Stein was found dead. The specifics of the scene, according to the police reports, are extremely unsettling.
Yeah, the police officer on the scene, Dieter Vermuth, described the discovery of Stein lying face up on a clearing. There were several knives next to him covered in blood, and he had severe abdominal cuts. It was a gruesome and baffling scene that immediately raised questions.
The autopsy findings complicated the verdict even further. What did the forensic evidence reveal about the manner of death? That seems key.
Well, the autopsy revealed 2 distinct types of wounds. First, there was a superficial wide cut across the upper abdomen, a wound that caused significant external bleeding, but crucially, did no internal damage. This was followed by a separate deep heart stab, which was ruled the immediate cause of death. The official verdict, supported by the appearance of the scene and the psychological toll of his deaths, was suicide.
But the very nature of those wounds, a tentative, almost exploratory cut followed by a fatal, purposeful stab, is exactly what fuels continuous speculation. It highlights how the Amber Room became George Stein's ultimate tragic doom. This mystery had demanded and claimed a life.
And it wasn't just lone hobbyists risking everything. In East Germany, the state itself was feverishly searching for the treasure that officially belonged to their Soviet big brother. The Stasi, the East German State Security Service, launched a massive, secret, organized search operation codenamed Pushkin.
State-level commitment implies significant resources. Who led this extraordinary effort? Must have been quite the operation.
It was led by Lieutenant Colonel Paul Anke, who quickly earned the nickname Comrade Amber within the Stasi ranks. He was incredibly systematic and relentless, utilizing the resources of the intelligence service to chase every archived document, every rumor, every captured German testimony. He managed to identify an astonishing 130 possible hiding places across the region.
130. Despite employing the full might of the Stasi and years of intensive investigation, did Comrade Amber find anything concrete? Anything at all?
He found absolutely nothing. Zero. It was a comprehensive failure to locate the treasure. However, the political imperative was so high that Enke was later awarded the Order of Battle in gold for his intensive investigations.
Wow. Rewarded for finding nothing.
Well, that award, despite the failure to produce the treasure, demonstrates the immense high priority the Lost Room held, not just as art, but as a symbolic object of political value. The Stasi pursued every single lead, no matter how small, and still came up empty, further cementing the room's mythical status.
The failure of the decades of searching, whether by independent hunters or state intelligence, ultimately points back to the man who last secured the crates, museum director Alfred Rode.
Exactly. The Soviet investigation into the room's location began almost immediately after the Red Army conquered the ruined Königsberg in April 1945. They had the ruins, but they needed the map, and Rode was the map. He was the primary person who knew the exact location, and he seemingly intended to use that knowledge to save himself.
His son recalled that Rode believed he would be safe precisely because he possessed crucial, high-value information he could share with the Soviets. He expected to bargain his safety using the room's location. The dangerous game.
He was repeatedly interrogated, but he played a masterfully dangerous game of misdirection. He didn't refuse to cooperate outright, which might have been suicidal. Instead, he provided numerous clues to the Soviet officers, successfully revealing the locations of various other valuable paintings, sculptures, and art objects that had been hidden elsewhere.
So he gave them just enough information to seem cooperative, but held the greatest secret back. Smart, in a way.
Exactly. He kept the location of the Amber Room itself completely to himself, never giving up the final specific cellar vault. He knew that once he gave up the biggest prize, his leverage was gone.
One of the Soviet interrogators later admitted the frustration of the investigation. What did they conclude about Rode's strategy?
The interrogator admitted that Rode misled us, showing us this and that place, wasting valuable time and resources. The Soviet secret services were unable to decipher his deception or break him down to reveal the final location. He held firm.
Tragically, for both the searchers and for Rode himself, the game ended abruptly. Alfred Rode died unexpectedly in December 1945, only months after the Soviet occupation began.
And with his death, the last living witness with verifiable knowledge was silenced. Rode took the knowledge of the Amber Room's precise hiding place, whether it was successfully transported out during the chaos or simply left to burn with him to the grave. It's really the moment the mystery transitioned from a military investigation to an enduring, almost literary myth.
Given that absence of knowledge, the ultimate focus shifted from recovering the lost treasure to restoring the legacy. The work on the official reconstruction of the Amber Room began in 1979 in the Catherine Palace near St. Petersburg.
Right. This was a project of enormous scale and required meticulous dedication. It took decades of painstaking work by hundreds of Russian artisans, committed to utilizing traditional 18th century techniques to recreate the lost masterpiece stone by stone, panel by panel. Truly incredible craftsmanship.
What's fascinating, given the history of its theft, is the source of the funding for this massive effort. It wasn't just Russian state funding, was it?
No, interestingly, the project was notably financed in part by a German energy provider, which contributed a significant amount, $3.5 million toward its creation.
Huh. A German company helping rebuild a treasure stolen by Germans.
Exactly. This corporate contribution was seen by many as a powerful act of cultural restitution, acknowledging the room's German origin and the devastation caused by the Nazi theft and subsequent disappearance. A symbolic gesture.
And thanks to those efforts, the unique, shimmering space exists today, completed in 2003. This magnificent reconstructed room ensures that the myth of the old, vanished Amber Room, a symbol of artistic genius, diplomatic exchange, and war's destructive power, lives on, generating endless research and fascination. So we've traced the astonishing, tumultuous journey of this irreplaceable treasure, from Prussia to St. Petersburg as a royal gift, back to Königsberg as a valuable war loot under a cloud of ideological justification. And finally, into the labyrinthine darkness of a crumbling wartime castle where it vanished forever.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, the Amber Room's material identity is just so key, isn't it?
Yeah.
The unique symbol, because its ancient material, the fossilized Baltic amber, is inherently tied to the coast near Königsberg. The fact that the physical object simply dissolved back into the history of that specific region makes the disappearance uniquely profound. It's almost as if the room became reabsorbed into the landscape of its origin during the chaos of the war.
That's a powerful thought. And this raises an important question for you, the listener, as you consider the cost of this myth. When you look at the tragic expense, the life of Jorkstein consumed by debt and desperation, the massive state-funded failure of the Stasi's operation, and the fact that we now have a perfect reconstruction. Does the value of the original Amber Room now reside more in the enduring, powerful myth of its disappearance than in the object itself? Does its identity as the world's most famous lost treasure outweigh the cultural value of the treasure it once was? Something for you to mull over until our next deep dive.